Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining in this webinar. Uh, it's been a very, very difficult last few months, and we as Prodigy Finance truly acknowledge the complexities and challenges that you guys have faced as aspirants for study abroad. We know things have been going topsy-turvy in terms of visa, in terms of school application deadlines and everything. And we as Prodigy Finance, we really stand by you and we are there to support you and help you through this journey so that you can fulfill your dreams. I am Mayank. I'm heading India for Prodigy Finance in terms of driving growth for the business. Along with me, there is Pritish, who has been around with Prodigy for I think 2 years now, and he's a very, let's say, known face. You must have seen him across in a couple of YouTube videos and must have attended a couple of webinars that he has done both online and also physically. And along with us, Smith is joining, who is an alumni of Texas A&M University, which is a top school, which I believe some of you might be interested in going to. So welcome again. We would like to kick off this session. Let's go to the next slide, please. As an introduction, let me talk about very, very quickly about the story of Prodigy Finance, right? How did we actually come into being? The company has been around for about 12 to 13 years now, and it all started in a very interesting way. There was a gentleman, a South African national called Cameron Stevens. He had an admit from a top business school, INSEAD Business School in France, to be specific. But just because he was an international student going from South Africa to France, he was actually unable to finance his MBA. And obviously, as you know, INSEAD being a top school, it's a very expensive course. He had to actually drop his admit for 1 year, and he had to wait for 1 full year to be able to manage his financing. And that's what sort of germinated the thought in his mind that, hey, this might be a problem which is worth solving. As soon as he started his MBA, he met a bunch of different students, international students, who were facing the similar problem. And in that 1 year of duration, after having multiple conversations with a lot of international students, he was convinced that this is a problem worth solving and it's a major pain point. And from there, the idea of Prodigy Finance germinated that funding and financing should not be a deterrent or a roadblock in terms of securing your education. So with that, the journey started. Prodigy Finance was initially focused fully on MBAs. We started from European business schools. We onboarded the top European business schools, and then went to onboard the American business schools. And eventually, around 2018, we started also adding more courses such as MS and STEM courses, and then went on to add, let's say, healthcare and public policy related courses. So it's been a long journey. As of today, we have funded almost $1 billion plus in funding to 20,000 students who come across 150 different nationalities. And the funding, we are supporting about 750 plus schools. And typically we are only, let's say, going for top universities. We started with FT, Financial Times ranking for MBAs, but then obviously we have graduated and added a couple of other ranking as well, so as to expand our reach overall. So that's the Prodigy story in a nutshell. And yeah, we are here to sort of support you in your journey and basically help you fulfill your dreams. I'll pass on now to Pritish, who will introduce Smith, and then Smith can take up the stage.
Thanks, Mayank, for that very articulate, beautiful recap. That's great to hear. So very quickly, let's do a very quick logistics check. If you can actually see the screen and hear me, maybe you guys could venture into the questions box. So that's where we are actually going to be taking the Q&A session. So it'd be nice to get familiarized with it. So if you are on the app or if you're on the web, there should be a small little pop-up which says questions. And if you can hear me and you can see me, can we just have a couple of yeses so I know you have access to that? I'm just going to wait for the next few seconds before I introduce our guest. Perfect. Thank you so much, Deepthi, for confirming that. All right. Quickly moving on, as Mayank said, we have a guest speaker, and the architecture of this webinar is going to be pretty simple, right? So the first half of it was focused on what is Prodigy's vision and mission as a company for the last 12 to 13 years. We're now going to have our guest speaker, which is Smit Mehta, come in, talk to us. I have a couple of questions ready for him, which I believe are fundamental in nature. And then we're going to move on to quick 2 slides on funding. And then we're going to have a group Q&A where you can start putting in your questions in. And then Mayank and Smit, respectively, all together, we would be answering them one at a time. Having said that, I would now like to introduce Smit. Smit, over to you.
Can you see my screen? Oh, thank you so much, Pritesh. So, first of all, thank you so much, Prodigy team, for giving me this platform to, share my experience, talk to all these amazing aspirants, and maybe inspire them in any way, help them in any way. So, first of all, I'll start off with briefly introducing myself. So, my name is Smit Mehta, and I'm a graduate student of Industrials and Systems Engineering at Texas A&M. I've completed my bachelor's in mechanical engineering from DJ Sangvi College, which is in Mumbai, affiliated to Mumbai University. Currently, I'm working with NXP Semiconductor, which is one of the most leading semiconductor industry, along with Intel, Qualcomm, likes of these. My projects are mainly focused on analysis, so I'm using a lot of Python, Tableau analysis tools to kind of figure out what businesses and what sense the business is making. And I have also been a recipient of a scholarship from American Society of Indian Engineers, and I've served as a committee member of the Indian Graduate Student Association, and have also worked as the committee member of Texas A&M Vision 2021-25. So it has been a great journey so far, and I'm looking to some great years in America. Uh, the culture is good, people are great, the work life is good. So I'm sure everyone here present, the aspirants are quite excited to start their journey in America as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Smith. I think that was short and crisp. But in respect to time and the actual intent of this webinar, I do have a couple of questions you. And
Sure.
I remember that me and you actually met, I believe it was February or March of last year in Mumbai when Prodigy Finance were doing events, and it was one of the biggest ones we had done as a company. So coming from that room, you showed up at this room, there was a study abroad workshop. Could you broadly help everyone understand of the need or the inception of the idea on why you wanted to pursue your master's? Because DJ Sanghavi is actually a pretty great bachelor's school, having
It
worked in the
is.
space for 7 years.
It is.
So how did the thought come through? Why did you want to do a master's immediately after? Just why
So
generally?
sure. So I a competition in Florida. So that was an SAE competition which was organized by Boeing and Lockheed Martin. So over there, I actually interacted with a few students, international students who were pursuing their higher education in America. We were just chatting about work culture, the professors here, what sort of skill set that they are being trained on, stuff like that. So I thought, even though DJ Sangvi is offering me great content, great resources, but the level that I see myself some years from now, I thought that there might be something lacking in my skill sets, which DJ Sangvi may or may not provide, or any college or bachelor's degree may or may not provide. So that's where I first thought maybe I need to do something about my future, about my career. So I had two options, masters and MBA. I was inclining towards some technology stuff, so masters was a natural for me then. So, and it was a decision which I discussed with a few seniors of mine, some people on LinkedIn. So that was how I kind of came up to doing masters.
That's a really good way to put it. So let's talk about Texas A&M. But before we talk about the actual school,
Yep.
could you share with anyone how long did this journey take you? Because I know it can be quite a long journey from your GRE to your test prep to actually applying for schools. So do you have a rough figure, because you went in fall of last year, I believe?
Fall 19, yes.
So how many months did it approximately take you from the time you showed up at that workshop and you got your funding sorted and you met few people in the space? But how long did it take you as a student to get that admit? Because I think
Sure.
it's that.
So, sorry. So I started, so once I returned back to India after that trip, I was kind of planning. So I can say my full-fledged planning for master's started in 18 July, I guess, 2018 July. So I started with what exams to give, how to prepare for those exams, what are the resources available, then some funding options. I was looking at that from July itself. I gave my GRE, I gave only one, like I had one attempt of GRE and I scored 316, 318 in that attempt. So I gave my GRE somewhere around September, I guess. And after that, I started with my SOP preparation, LOR preparation, shortlisting of universities, approaching professors, what funding options they have, what research options they have. So I started off with that somewhere in December. Then I got my admits. First admit I got was in March, and Texas A&M I got my admit in somewhere April, and I had my visa interview scheduled on 28th of July, if I remember correctly. So it has been a year somewhat from my inception of the idea and my visa interview, approximately a year or so, I can say so.
Okay, that's great. And in the interest that you just mentioned visa, and it was actually a week away, we went back in time. I'm gonna see if I can launch a poll.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the polls don't seem to be working, so we're just gonna have to go without it. My sincere
Okay.
apologies on that. But yes, okay, that's perfect. So it took you almost 12 to 14 months that you actually
12 to
landed up.
14.
That was great. I think you spoke about some things that you researched on schools. You spoke to a few professors,
Yeah.
you did due diligence, and you were already in the US before you actually went for this entire competition. So I think you were beforehand. Not everyone actually has that opportunity, so I'm glad you had it. But why Texas A&M? If you had to categorize the top three things you looked at before narrowing down on your admit, because I'm sure you would have had many admits. So how
Yeah.
did you go narrowing down on Texas A&M? And even if you could share for everyone else, where else did you have an admit from? I think that'll be super helpful.
Sure, I can start with that. So I had admits from Purdue University. I had admits from University of Southern California, from University of North Carolina State University. So these are some of the top colleges that I had admits from. So why Texas A&M? That's actually a great question. So I had three things that I was, particularly focused on. So since my track is not a thesis track, so I was not quite looking at research, but that was something that I had in back of my mind. But the three major things that I was focused on were ranking, then it was the alumni network and the location. So ranking wise, I was referring to a few websites, and all of them had Texas A&M listed in top 7 colleges for industrials and systems engineering. So that was a positive point for me. And alumni network, I'm not sure if everyone on the list or on the guest list know. Uh, Texas A&M has one of the world's most diverse and brilliant network there is. So we have this something known as Aggie network. So if so, there are incidents where people meeting each the another Aggie on railway stations or airports, and they connect over a cup of coffee or beer, something or something like that, and they chat, and that helps them land job interviews and stuff like that. We have something known as Aggie ring, which is a proper big ring which we get after the third semester. And if anybody sees that ring and he knows what that ring signifies, they'll just come up to you and start a conversation with you. So I was looking for that brilliant conversation and that sense of interaction with other people. And the other thing was location. So College Station, even though is a bit dull compared to Mumbai, where I grew up, it is quite closely connected to Houston and Austin, which are like industry hubs in Texas. So even the College Station itself is a very small city, but having Houston and Austin nearby has quite a lot impact on the companies which come to our career fairs and people that with whom we can interact on. So that was some of the major points that I had for Texas A&M.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the third question. So we just have two more, and then we're going to dive into Q&A after we speak about finance. But before that, let's talk about visa and funding probably first. You also happen to be a Prodigy Finance customer. So could you, what was your due diligence? What were the things you looked at, and why did you go for a Prodigy Finance offering over the rest?
So, like I mentioned, I was planning for my master's from a long time, 12 months. So I had an opportunity to interact with many loan providers, and my dad and my mom were particularly very vigilant about this, talking to some loan providers themselves, because I had specified, like, my dad was willing to fund my entire education, but I wanted to do my master's education on myself. I didn't want his help on this. So he was particularly active while searching for loan options and stuff like that. So it was a senior friend of mine who recommended me Prodigy Finance, and I was able to chat with an agent on the Prodigy website, just get my doubts cleared, just created my account and got my doubts cleared. They were quite active while replying, even though if, like, I think the team works from South Africa, so if they were not able to get back to me immediately, they would send me an email. We would connect over email. So that is something I really liked about Prodigy Finance. In the meanwhile, I was also talking to some Indian loan providers, but that human touch or human factor was not there with them while discussing things. They were just trying to market their product to me. So I guess that was something that really worked well for me with Prodigy Finance. Funding wise, the process was pretty simple, as I think Pritish could elaborate on that more. But the process was pretty simple and quite user friendly. So I guess that also helped my mind go more towards Prodigy Finance, I guess.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, we'll definitely touch base in that. I have a slide just to take everyone on the process,
Sure.
but no, so trusting us and helping us fund your dreams. And it's so good to see you on the other side. I think it doesn't become real till you actually get onto that plane and you actually go
Oh
out.
yes, oh yes. So right before, like, I sat on the plane and the plane was like, the captain announced we are taking off. It was like, oh, this is it. I'm going to America and I have to be prepared for the best journey of my life and make some important decisions going on there. So yeah, that's there. Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's amazing. Good to hear. But before you did get onto the plane, you had to secure your visa. And every in this country or anywhere around the world wants to be a visa expert, right? But it's always good to hear firsthand on what you've experienced.
Sure.
I recently went for my own US visa around, I think in the month of September. It was actually just a minute long. But could you maybe share how was it for you? What were the questions asked? If you could just share your visa experience, I think that'll be very helpful.
Sure.
And for the folks that are going to be listening to this rational, while we do have the polls which are currently inactive, there was a question, given the current pandemic, what are you planning to do? So the options were to defer. Option 2 was to actually go online and do that model, or the third one was to wait. So if you guys could type with these 3 words, which is defer, hybrid model, or wait in the questions box, it's going to help me, Smit, and Mayank actually gauge the room. So alter the second half of this conversation based on those responses. Apologies on the poll not working, but if you could maybe just type in a quick line on the question on what you as an individual are planning to do, that would really help. And over to you again, Smith. If you could talk a bit
Sure.
about the visa.
So my visa interview was pretty quick. I guess it was less than 40 seconds or 50 seconds at max. So going up to the officer, everyone has this sort of anxiety whether I have all the documents there. So I was no different from everyone. So I was checking my papers, double checking them whether I had all my documents. I had created a checklist of things I was going over it. I had consulted a few people. I was checking and checking and checking. But so what the visa interviewer is trying to analyze is whether the university that you are going to has some reputation in market. So first thing, your college reputation does matter. Mine being Texas A&M. So I had that leverage that Texas A&M is quite reputed, and the other admits as well, Purdue and USC. These universities are quite reputed, so that doubt was out of option for him. The other thing that he particularly looks at is your funding option. So what he wants to see is whether you have necessary resources to sustain, because America being an expensive country than India, I think he or she just wants to check whether you will be able to sustain financially in America. Would you be able to survive basically if at all some funding issue happens, you be able to sustain. And the other thing is he's just checking your confidence. So I would say to everyone, just be confident and be cool. He's just a human being, so don't worry about him eating you up. So I think that shouldn't be a problem if you are confident enough. And do check your documents, double check them, I guess.
Okay, that's that's insightful. No, thank you for being so candid about that, because I think everyone has a different version. But yeah, truth being told, it's a very simple conversation that you're having with another human who's just trying to
Yes.
assess your intent and probably even establish your roots to your home country, because you are, of course, crossing borders for the purpose.
Crossing body. Yep.
I would say be candid, be true, and it's just going to be very quick and it would be over for you more. All right. So while we do see some questions about US life and things like that, I'm going to maybe pause for the next 6 to 7 minutes, right?
Okay.
And I just have 2 slides and I want to take everyone over funding, because I see close to 7 to 8 questions on funding. And then we can move right into the actual group that we need.
Sure.
Okay, great. So for everyone that's actually over here looking at this, first of all, I hope everyone is doing well, staying safe and staying at home while we persevere and we come out of this pandemic strong together as a country, and not only as a country, but even as a species throughout the world. Having said that, the best part about the Prodigy Finance process is it's commitment free, right? So I see some responses here on what people were planning to do. Some people want to wait, some people want to go for the hybrid model, some people want to defer, but some people want to wait. So for the guys who want to wait and who have admits, and I did look at the stats for the folks that did have admits, and close to 70% of the folks in the room actually have admits for this year. So having said that, the process is quite simple, right? So whether you have an admit or you don't have an admit, if you're applying for this year or your next year, your class is going to be set up on something called prodigyfinance.com, because the entire process is online. You never really need to meet anyone in person. And as Smit mentioned, we always have a customer service team. Mayank and I do a lot of events online, offline, once this pandemic ends. So if you ever want us to see us in person, it could be accessible. But the truth is, all you need is an internet connection and the intent to study abroad. So you go ahead, and as Smit mentioned, he had 3 or 4 admits. So Smit would have probably applied for Purdue, Texas A&M, and the third university. He would have received a code for all 3 universities, because all of them are assessed uniquely. They're not assessed because you're just going abroad. They're assessed even based on many criteria, and the college and program being one of them. It's based on a proprietary model with 50+ variables. So the minute you get these 3 codes, you use these codes to actually even make a decision in terms of return on investment, because they would vary. You might get a higher loan size, you might get a lower loan size, your interest rates could vary. So you can make that final decision that, hey, I have 3 admits, but Prodigy Finance is my lender, and it makes sense to go with option 2 because the curriculum is great, heard a lot about the professors, it has a good alumni story, and in this case, what Smit mentioned about Texas A&M, I'm happy about the placement report. Okay, I'm going to go with this, and my funding is also great. So you go ahead and you accept one of these codes. Once you accept, you pretty much drag a couple of documents onto the web interface at prodigyfinance.com. You pretty much have like a platform or portal. So we ask you for your admit letter, we ask you for your passport copy, your current proof of address, and your credit report, right? So these are the things that we currently ask you for. You pretty much do a drag and drop, and in 2 to 8 business days, we process it and we give you something called a sanction letter. Now, understand this sanction letter is free of cost. It does not entitle, or you do not entitle yourself or lock yourself into this offering. You use this sanction letter to go ahead for your I-20 and your visa processes and things like that. And the final confirmation from your side will come in at step 6 as seen on the screen. So at step 5, we confirm it from our side as a lender. And at step 6, you confirm it as a student that you are actually taking these loans, taking this loan. Apologies. So in that case, you pretty much sign it electronically. We have made an exemption for the folks actually who are doing the hybrid model. You would be even able to sign in India, but earlier it would always be electronically and it would be outside your home country. So if you're going for that hybrid model, don't worry, you can sign it 2 to 3 weeks before your classes start. And the beauty about that is because when classes start 2 to 3 weeks before and you sign the agreement 2 to 3 weeks before, you as an individual would be entirely certain if you want to be taking this debt or not. A. B, if you want to be taking this debt, you know you definitely want to go to your master's. So given the fluid situation, given how great things are, I would say secure your funding. It's free of cost. It takes 20-30 minutes to get a quote, less than a week to get a sanction letter. And if everything goes good and it's all signals go and you have a checkered flag and you even get to probably fly by spring, you can go ahead and sign this agreement and your funds would be sent to the school. And last but not least, you have your study period and your grace period of 6 months. So no payments towards Prodigy Finance would be applicable during this point. You would not need to pay anything from your pocket. It's all built into the loan. Which brings me to the last slide on funding before we head into the group Q&A. So just to re-emphasize, all Prodigy Finance loans are collateral and co-signer free. That means the only prerequisite is you attending a top-ranked school globally. So as long as you're attending a top-ranked school globally, we'll be able to fund you without a need of a collateral or co-signer. There are no hidden fees. There's just one administration fee, which is only applied after you sign the agreement. It's a one-time administration fee of 4%. So if I was borrowing, let's say $40,000, the administration fee would be roughly around $1,600, which would be built into the loan. So you don't pay for it upfront; it's built into the loan. The entire process is 100% online. The offer takes sometimes as less as 1 to 5 days. We disperse in global currencies, that's euros, pounds, and US dollars. This depends on where your campus or your university is housed. And let's talk about interest rates. I've actually updated this slide to reflect the interest rates for USD loans. So if you were going like how Smith went to the United States, you could get anywhere an interest rate between 5.27% to 8.77% in 30 minutes or less, right? This is without a need of collateral and co-signer. This interest rate is actually broken into two components. One is something called the fixed margin, which is the Prodigy Finance given rate between 5 to 8.5%. And then you have something called variable rate because loans are floating in when it comes to nature of borrowing for your education, right? So it's a floating rate. And the current variable for USD loans is somewhere around 0.28%. It's actually been the lowest, which effectively makes Prodigy Finance one of the cheapest options currently if you're planning to fund your studies abroad. You have repayment terms for 7, 10, 15, and even 20 years in some cases. For some of you guys, when you submit that application, you'll have an option to choose it. If you do not have an option, the system would choose one for you. I would say stick with what the system chooses and do not be like, hey, I want to choose 7 years, because I want a more attractive monthly installment. Remember, there are no penalties if you prepay early. So choose the 15 years. If you want to close it in 2 or 3 years, you can do it. If you win the lottery tomorrow, you can close the entire loan in one shot. But if you choose 7 years and you're unable to make that commitment, and given the fluid situation, I would say go with what the system does or do your own calculations and choose a loan tenure which seems feasible, where you'll be comfortably able to make those payments. As I mentioned earlier, the loan letter is free of charge. Repayments begin only after 6 months of your classes ending, so no payments towards Prodigy Finance during this time, and you keep getting monthly statements from time to time. Having said that, I would now like to just move on to the last slide. So as Smith mentioned, these are details of our customer service team. We can again touch about this before we end the actual presentation, because I know Smith has a meeting and we have him for 20 minutes. So let's take the most out of it. But for the folks that would want to join the WhatsApp community, that's the QR code. It's a direct can from Apple. You could use Google Lens on Android, and you can hop into one of our groups if you wanted some community group. Having said that, I would now like to just open up for questions. Just give me a second. Great. Mayank, the first question is actually for you. It's on the actual process, and I don't think I've covered this one. So I think this is for a US school. So the question is, what is the maximum loan a student can get for a US STEM program?
Yeah, so it really depends on the school and the course that you're going to. But typically, it could vary from being 100% of the cost of attendance to 80% of only the tuition fee, right? So that's the range. The best way to find out is basically just going ahead on prodigyfinance.com and registering, right? As soon as you register and you start the application, you'll get to enter all details which pertain to where you are going, what you're studying, and also some details about your budget and your personal situation, right? This is that you will be able to get an answer into exactly what is the amount that you'll be getting funded for.
Thanks, Mayank. I think that makes sense. Smit, the second question for you is, can you please specify what was the criteria to join Texas A&M? I think it's a bit vague, but if you could get some light. Was there any criteria, any prerequisite? Maybe you could start off with the course and the specialization you did and take it from there.
So I would keep this a bit more general than for Texas A&M because there is no set prerequisite or checklist that you need to follow to get into A&M or in that case any top college in America. People like the people who are on the other side checking your profile, they look at your GRE score, they look at your CGPA. If you have work experience, is it relevant enough to suit their needs? They actually look at your holistic profile rather than just having a look at a single point or a very myopic look at your profile. They have a very general look or a very holistic look at your profile is what I mean. So my course, which is Industrial and Systems Engineering, is heavily focused on manufacturing efficiency, productivity. So my profile, the way I aligned my profile and I showed the university that I have the required skill set was I had experience leading a team. So we were manufacturing radio controlled aircrafts. So I had manufacturing experience in that. We were improving efficiencies of our workshops by taking out some lean projects. I was also a part of the committee which was kind of leading different teams in our colleges. So I was particularly handling the finances of the team structure of the entire college. So I guess that's what made them think that I am capable of the coursework that they would throw at me, the challenges that I would have while pursuing industrial engineering as my career. So I would say rather than focusing on just one thing, I think people should focus on building their holistic profile, and after building that profile, they should be capable enough to ensure that the recruit or the person who's analyzing your profile is able to understand what you're trying to say or what your profile means, I guess.
Thanks. Very well answered. Thank you, Smit. Mayank, we have a follow-up question on funding, and I think this is an interesting one. The question is, can people from any nationality request financing? Also, do you only apply to universities? Sorry, do you only support universities as per the FT ranking? So I think it's a two-fold question.
Yeah. So in terms of nationalities, we support 150 nationalities, and these are all let's say major ones. And if you take the percentage, you basically cover almost the entire globe. In terms of what was the second bit? Sorry.
And the second bit, I think, was about the supported school list by Prodigy. I think the slide only mentioned
the ranking. Right. So absolutely. So we started with FT MBAs, and that was when we started the company. But obviously, as we progressed, we added US news and other ranking providers. But it is still heavily linked with reputed and let's say recommended rankings in the world. So that's how we shortlist schools, and that's a very important criteria for us in terms of deciding who to fund and who not to fund.
Thanks, Mayank. Yes, that's crisp. Uh, a little personal question, Smith, only if you feel like sharing this again, wrapped around funding. I think the audience wants to know what was the loan size that you took from Prodigy and what was your total cost of attendance. Only if you feel comfortable about the second one, but we could maybe start with the cost of
Sure,
attendance.
I can start off with the total costing of my semester wise. So uh, we have 3 semesters: fall semester, spring semester, and summer semester. And the tuition we have to pay for each semester individually. So I guess for the fall semester and spring semester, the total was $24,000 US dollars. And for summer semester, since I'm on CPT, I'm working with a company, I had to pay a $1,000 course registration, CPT registration fee. So till now, for 3 semesters, I've paid somewhere around 26,000 US dollars. And the sanction amount was somewhere around 35, 36,000 US dollars. So I had a huge chunk of money left after I paid all of my tuition fee.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yep.
that makes sense. Um, Another follow-up question linked with funding and visa. So Mayank, a student here basically has an admit from a Prodigy Finance supported school, which is Stevens Institute, and they qualify for the entire I-20 amount. So this candidate is getting the complete I-20 amount from Prodigy Finance. The question is, will this create any issue while he or she is trying to secure a visa?
I don't think so. I mean, there shouldn't be any such, let's say, correlation between the amount you are taking versus your sort of visa, let's say, eligibility and approval. I think what we also discussed in the call earlier was that with regards to visa, it's just that they are looking at whether or not you have enough sufficient funds to support your tenure of study. And the other factors are obviously how confident you are, how accurately you represent the data that you have in terms of documents and everything, and obviously establishing routes to your home country, right? So these are the factors which are important. And the amount you take, I mean, if you take the full amount, there's no reason why it should sort of be a hindrance to your visa. So that's what we would say.
Absolutely, beautifully put. And if I could just, retouch on the second point that Mayank mentioned, because we were asked this question when we met close to 1,000 students across 3 cities in the month of February before the pandemic happened. So the truth is, you might never even be asked this question. The conversation of the visa might be so quick, you would never actually even be told that, hey, can I see your loan sanction letter? They'll actually have everything on them on system. And if they question you, it's just a test. So in your case, I don't want to call out your name, but in your case, if you have taken complete funding, it's probably for a good reason because you needed the funds and you didn't have savings. So that is the same reason you tell the visa officer in complete candid nature that, hey, I don't have savings. I come from this background. Masters is my dream, and Prodigy Finance is a lender, was willing to support it, and why it made sense. And I don't see why they would question you otherwise. And for the last 10 years, we have supported 20,000 plus students who have used the same Prodigy Finance letter, which is basically an electronic letter. In all reality, you can pretty much use a color printout because it's electronically signed. So yes, that would be used and is applicable for your visa interview. Okay, another interesting one, Mayank, for you. If a student or personal has an active loan, is she or he eligible for funding?
Yeah, that's a good question actually, and the answer to it is it really depends, right? So it depends on what is the outstanding balance of the active loan, when did you take it, what is the due amount, and all of those questions, right? So there could be two scenarios, right? Suppose you have an active loan and there is maybe just 2 or 3 installments which are due, which you can, let's say, complete in the next 3 months, right? And if the payment history shows that you have been a very, let's say, diligent in terms of all your payments, that's obviously a good thing, right? And it will reflect in your credit score, and it's a good thing, right? And it might maybe bump up a little bit the amount you get from Prodigy, right? The other scenario is the other extreme, right? So suppose you just bought a home in India, and then you have the whole amount outstanding for the loan on you, right? And you are the only, let's say, owner of the home, you are the only owner of the loan, as well. So that's a different scenario altogether, and that might impact the amount you get funded from Prodigy. Because then think about it, right? When you graduate from your masters, you will have two major loans sitting on your head. One will be the student loan you take from Prodigy, and the other will be the home loan, and you will be liable to pay both of them, right? And then given that you will graduate from a school, your salary might not be sufficient to pay both of those loans. You will have obviously living expenses in that country, so that changes the scenario quite a bit. So you have to keep these things in mind, and then apply eligibility so accordingly. So that's what the scenario would be.
Thanks, ma'am. Yeah, I think that was crisp and clear. Smit, a question for you, and I think, yeah, this is probably, I don't know if it's an emotional one or not. So the first part of the question is, how are you doing personally in a foreign country during the pandemic? And a build up to that question is, how did you land up securing an internship? Because you probably, the class of 2020, were the most impacted in many
Oh, yeah.
senses. So
So I'll start off with the first question. So it has been a roller coaster, I can say. So, I mean, it's not something that you are born with and you can adapt to new culture. The culture is just opposite than what we have in India. So, culture-wise, it takes some time to blend in, but eventually you make some friends and things just go perfectly from there, I guess. And in terms for internship, so for internship, it has been quite a journey, I guess I can say so. So I was in India in December till January for my sister's wedding, and I just came to America a day before my career fair, from which I landed this internship. So the key here, I think so, is networking. You have to keep networking with recruiters, people from the company. Show your genuine interest in the company. Get to know what exactly they are working on. Try to show them how you can add a value to the company, because there are a lot of people who can replace you easily. But so you need to show them that how can you add a value to the company in any way possible. And networking is the key, I can say so. Go on to LinkedIn, start connecting to people, talk to them about your passion, talk to them about how they can secure an internship, how can they excel in their career. And trust me, people are more than willing to answer your questions. You have to be courteous to them. You cannot just shoot random messages, but if done properly, I can say so, networking in America will help you all go a long way.
thank you. Okay. Yeah. I'm glad that you're doing well. A follow-up question, and I think this is interesting, I think, just because of the way it's structured. So the question is for you, Smith.
Mhm.
The certain individual got less than 60% in his or her undergraduate. So just probably in a similar situation in terms of years. I'm sure you probably, I'm not saying you got under 60%, but the person has less than 60%, but has worked for a tech giant like Amazon for 3.5
Okay.
years. What are the chances of him or her getting into a college? And I believe it's a tech role at Amazon. So what are the chances for good colleges where you're backed with a big tech company?
So my first follow-up for that is whether like the work he or she was doing, is it relevant to the course that he or she is applying to? If yes, so something about my profile, I had 8.7 CGPA in my undergrad, but I did not have any work experience. I had a few internship, but not a solid work experience like the person has. So if the person has relevant work experience, I'm sure the faculty and the member of the board doing the admitting might take, and not might, but they will definitely take that into consideration. They would agree that the CGPA is a factor, but you cannot eliminate the fact that you have been in the professional environment for some time. You have used those knowledge that you have gained in undergrad and solved some practical problems in the industry. So I would say so that highlight this point, that you have used some sort of bookish knowledge to solve industry problems in your SOP, and I'm sure that would work wonders for you.
Thanks, Smith. I know you do have to join a meeting in about 10 minutes, so I'm going to focus
Yes.
some you. And there are a lot of questions on funding. So me and my uncle will probably just pause for the next 5 minutes. And yes, so the next one I think is also an interesting one, given the time and the pandemic, if everything goes well. Hi, I wanted to ask about RA and TA opportunities at Tamu, not only at Tamu, but what is the general trend across the United States if I were to secure one?
Sure. So RA and TA basically are some assistantship, which is TA is teaching assistantship and RA is research assistantship. So what you have to do is professor basically assigns you to help them with their workload. So with a teaching assistantship, what you have to do is you have to help the professor with the coursework, make some PPTs for them, do some grading work, if take up some lab work for them, maybe fill in their place for some lectures to whenever they are not present, something like that. So what they would, so the way you can approach with either research assistantship or teaching assistantship is you can start emailing professors that you are interested in that role, and how, like if you have a subject, let's say mathematics, what content that particular course has, and do you have you studied that particular content or that particular course somewhere else, and you have that prerequisite idea or prerequisite knowledge about that course, then and then only that professor would be able to trust you for that. And getting a TA for the first semester student, it is a bit difficult because let me put it in this way. A professor is willing to stake his or her reputation with you. If you mess up in some or the other way, his reputation will go down. So he wouldn't want to trust anybody he has not met or he does not know properly. So you can start. I'm not discouraging people from sending emails to professors. You should absolutely do that. I have done it myself. But don't keep your hopes high for the first semester. Definitely after meeting the professor, showing him or her your work and your talent, I'm sure you'll be able to secure it in the second semester. So the process is same for research assistantship and teaching assistantship. Start emailing professor, mention their research work and how you are interested in helping him or her with that.
Amazing. And I think which brings me to one of the last questions and something that actually stood my eye. I think we connected on LinkedIn around 3-4 months
Yes.
ago. So Smith, you have close to 7-8 certifications and licenses, which are proper legit ones, right? Not
Yeah.
freebie. And you even have close to 7 or 8 extracurricular activities during your UG, during your masters, and I think you're still actively involved in a few. I think you're also a Prodigy Finance Ambassador, which you do on the sidelines. So could you maybe share how big of an impact does this extracurricular activities mean to actually submitting or achieving and getting an admit from a dream school?
So initially, when I started getting involved in all these extracurricular activities, it was not with a vision of securing a good college, but me being a more of extrovert person, I like interacting with people. So I started off with that. But I can say so it has helped me a lot in terms of securing Texas A&M and Purdue University, because like it showed them that I had some capability of going out of my way, taking up some new opportunities, some new responsibilities, and in the meanwhile, while focusing on my academics, excelling. I can say so. I excelled in my academics, but doing everything simultaneously, it shows what sort of potential the candidate has, I guess. So it does help present a good picture to the committee while they are reviewing your profile. So yeah, that's the way it helped me, I guess.
Interesting. And you mentioned earlier on the session that you were a scholarship recipient. Could you maybe
Yeah.
share a bit more details for which program, or was it for your UG or was it for your masters?
So it was for my master's. So that was somewhere around in December, if I'm not wrong. That there is this committee known as American Society of Indian Engineers, and they scout for people in colleges around their in Texas area. So you have A&M, you have University of Texas at Arlington, at Austin. So they keep on scouting for students in these colleges, and they select one student from each department So I was the recipient for Industrials and Systems Engineering from the entire Texas. So there were, I guess, another 25 students from different departments and different colleges who were awarded this scholarship. But it was a great, this thing, what do you call it, exposure for me. I got to meet a lot of new people there, some industry experts, people with 40, 50 patents. So that was kind of a nice get together, I can say so.
Amazing, Smith. Great. I think you have 7 to 8 minutes left, so I'm gonna probably let you go prepare for your meeting.
Oh yeah, thank you so much.
Do you have any closing thoughts? Being from the country that you are, I believe we have people all around the world actually, but as an international student, do you have any closing words for folks? Any top of the head thoughts?
So I would say so that I can say so that take things lightly, but be vigilant. Don't let GRE score or your CGPA have negative effects on you. Everyone has been through that. Just try your best, do your best. I can say I can think so. Like do your best, try your best, and no matter what the results you get, you'll be able to get into some nice university and you'll definitely excel. I am sure about that. And stay vigilant. That's all I wanted to say. And start networking. If you are coming to America, start networking. Go on to LinkedIn and start connecting to people.
Well said. All right. On behalf of the Prodigy Finance team, Smith, such a pleasure. So good to see you again. And have a good rest of your day. And we really appreciate your time. And for the 100-odd folks that did join this webinar, thank you once again.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Smith.
Yep.
Great. Okay, so that leaves Mayank and I in the room. So we have around 10 to 15 questions, so we could probably go rapid fire. With this, pretty simple ones, but I'm just gonna quickly start off and take them as they come. Okay, so the first question is, what is the right time to apply for a loan? Lil Wade, you wanna take this one?
Whenever you want, actually, whenever you are ready. That's the answer, right? I mean, even if you don't need an admit to apply, you can just go there with an imaginary admit, start an application and get a quote. When you eventually get an admit, you can redo another new application. So it's actually whenever you're ready.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a solid answer. Thanks, Mel. The other question, I'll probably just take it up in the interest of time because I'm reading it out as well. So the candidate wants to basically know how much would the total amount be paid back to Prodigy if he or she actually takes a loan from Prodigy. So Prafula, the quickest answer is once you submit that 20-minute application, you have your entire loan quote in front of you. So the amount payable monthly, the total amount you land up paying, what is your rate of interest, what is your tenure, and things like that, all on your computer screen in 20 to 30 minutes without actually uploading any documents at this stage. So a lot of the questions that you've actually asked, and thank you for being such an engaging candidate in this webinar. So you would get to know how much money you will pay back. Alternatively, if you wanna figure out if you paid back early, say you had a 15-year term, but you paid back in 7 years and you made some lump sum payments, you can always reach out to a customer service team, which is on the left. Shoot them an email, hey, this is my hypothetical scenario. I would be making X amount of payment in Y month. Could you tell me how would my statement then look like? And we're happy to break down the math and send it to you. A quick follow-up question on that is about how interest is charged and if parents need to pay an interest component during the study and grace period. Okay, so I think I will take the first part of that question. So interest normally is charged, it's simple interest monthly, and we do something called a one-time capitalization after your study and grace period, which will include your admin fee, your principal, and the interest accrued on that principal, right? The second question was, do I need to make any payments during my study and grace period? I'm gonna defer that to Mayank.
So yeah, the answer to that is you don't need to, but if you want to, you can, right? So you're not obligated to, but if you are really, really careful about minimizing your interest cost, you can actually pay upfront. Let's say you secure a job which gives you a sign-on bonus or something like that, you can pay upfront, but you are not required to.
Great. Yes, completely agree. I think we have already answered this question. So I think the question is again twofold, and I'll take this up. So in other lenders across our region, there is a component that you need to pay. I think the parents need to pay from back home, which is the interest component. So I'm happy to say at Prodigy Finance, we do not require that as well. A, because there's no parent involved. This is a collateral and cosigner free loan, right? B, no sort of payments are required, and you're under no obligation. And as Mayank mentioned, if you would like to, let's say, pay off a certain amount, or you get a job, or you want to clear the admin fee after your first disbursement, you can make any prepayment that you feel you're comfortable with, but you're under no obligation to do so. Your prepayments or your repayment only begins 6 months after your classes end. So if you're going for a 24-month program, which is 2 years, that's 6 months of grace. Your first payment towards Prodigy Finance would only be on the 31st month. There's a question here on visa, and I'm happy to take this. Does taking an unsecured loan affect the establishment of roots with home country during the visa interview? How to answer these questions on why unsecured loans are during the visa interview? I think the answer to these questions actually change year to year, right? So in the current year, as I mentioned, Prodigy Finance actually has one of the lowest rate of interests, right? So I think your answer should rather be that I went with a lender like Prodigy Finance because I was getting a higher loan amount. I like how the company is. They work directly with the school because there were some questions about disbursement. So for everyone's knowledge, we disperse the funds directly to your university, and then the university sends you things such as living expenses. So if you explain these things to your visa officer, I would say the first one being is that, hey, I got the most competitive offer from Prodigy Finance. He wouldn't re-question you on that, whether it's secured or unsecured. And I know Indian lenders right now, the rates can go as high as 9.5 to 14% or 9 to 14%, because I know this person is from India. And for Prodigy Finance, if you were taking a USD loan, it's somewhere between 5.2 to 8.7%. That's fixed and variable included, making it one of the most lowest interest rates in the region. So there's a follow-up question: is 100% course fee funding available? The short answer to this is it actually depends, sometimes on varies, but if I had to put a blanket on it, for STEM programs in the United States, we support up to 80% cost of attendance. So that's 80% tuition fee and 80% living expenses as determined by your university, right? So in most cases, you might get the entire amount. I saw that there was someone over here who got the entire amount, and then you would need to put the remainder of the funds in. There are some exceptions where we support 100%, but the quickest way to again understand this and to re-emphasize what Mayank had mentioned earlier, the beauty about the Prodigy Finance process is the minute you start an application. So let's say if Mayank was going to Purdue and I was going to Texas A&M, every detail about the COA is already pre-filled on the application. So we already know the cost of attendance for Purdue. We already know the cost of attendance for Texas A&M. So the application will simply ask a question, okay, Pritish, how much do you want to borrow for year one out of the cost of attendance of $40,000? I pretty much just need to enter 35 because I have $5,000 in savings. Mayank on the other end might be like, okay, I only need 25 because I have a scholarship. I am anticipating something as an assistantship, but my father or my mom is very encouraging in terms of supporting a fund of that education fee. So I would say you'd be surprised. It's pretty much 20 questions which are asked upfront on a navigation screen. So just answer them. It's pretty much a cakewalk, and you'll have your code within a couple of minutes. I had one comment about people not able to join the WhatsApp community. So if you're using an iPhone, you can basically open the camera app. If you're using an Android application, you can download Google Lens or some leading providers of Android phones such as Samsung, OnePlus. You would be able to scan it from your native app. So if you want to join the community group, it's not a service channel. I want to quickly reiterate that it's not a service channel. It's basically to get to know what everyone is doing. And we have a WhatsApp community with more than 2,500 to 3,000 students who are planning to go for fall 2020. So if you're interested in such sort of a thing, we have a community channel on the right. Okay, we have an interesting question here. Mayank, I'm just going to send this to you. Will we have the loan amount in hand before leaving India? And I think I probably didn't explain it well. So Mayank, if you would want to maybe touch a bit on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a bit different and sort of counterintuitive to understand. The loan amount is never given to the student, right? It is always given to the university, and there's a reason behind it. The reason is that it, as part of FCA regulations, FCA is basically the RBI of United Kingdoms, where we are headquartered in. So they mandate and they require us to sort of make sure that there is no money laundering happening, right? So if we are sending money to the student, there is a huge possibility that money gets misused in one way or the other. And in order to negate that, we are required to send money directly to the university, right? It has a couple of benefits to you. First, the responsibility is taken off you, right? You are not having to bother about dates and deadlines and all of that stuff. The second main benefit, and that monetary benefit, is that you don't then need to worry about FX rates, because the money is in USD and it goes directly to a US bank account of the university, right? So that basically saves a lot of FX conversion. If you had taken a loan from an Indian bank, you would have gotten money in INR, then you would have had to translate it into USD, and that's again 1 to 2% cost right there. Right, so that's thing. If you have also taken the amount for living expenses, what will happen is that the university will then send the living expense amount to your US bank account, right? So that's the second bit of it. So with both of these things happening, you have everything that you need, and you don't need to have to worry about any kind of deadlines, and you are sort of sorted in that way.
Thanks, Mayank. I think that was comprehensive. We actually are right over 2 minutes, so I'm going to take the last question over here and hand it over to you for a closing note. But two questions rather. So the first one is, will there be a recording of this video? Yes. So if you registered for this event in 24 hours, you would get a link to the Prodigy Finance website, and you will even be able to access this recording. Feel free to share and network and circulate that amongst the network. And the second one is, do we need to have a letter of acceptance from the university before I start the process? So as we have actually mentioned throughout this webinar, no. To start the application process for your funding, your master's, you don't need to have the acceptance. I'm guessing you're a 2021 aspirant, so you can start the process now, and when the letter comes through, you can send in your documents for verification, and we change your offer into a confirmed loan letter. So you don't need to have the offer in hand. As long as you have the intent to go to a top ranked school, we will be able to support you. That was me, Pratish. It was amazing moderating this session. I would like to thank Mayank and Smit for being here, and over to you, Mayank.
Yep, thank you so much, Pritish, for organizing all the logistics and making this webinar a great success. And yeah, it was great chatting with you. It is always great to help you with your questions. And obviously, if there are anything more that you want to talk about, or you have unanswered questions, feel free to join the WhatsApp group. Pritish and I are already there. We see that there are a few people who are already joining it, so we can definitely continue the conversation there. It's sort of a community where you can ask questions to each other. You might even find people who are from the same schools, going to the same university and stuff like that. So it's a very engaging community. So it's good to participate and engage there. Yeah, but and then sort of going back to what Smith was saying, right? So from my personal experience of having lived in US and having worked there, the biggest challenge for Indians especially is the networking bit, right? So as long as you are open to networking, as long as you are smart in networking, you should be sorted, right? So don't be scared. My message would be that don't be scared, just be proactive, just be smart, and go there with a plan, and you should be fine. So with that note, we'd like to end this, and we'll like to see you on WhatsApp and other channels. So best of luck. Thank you and good night.